I refused to give my son and his wife the money from my house sale. That was my answer after 3 months of enduring pressure, manipulation, and threats, disguised as family concern. But what came after that refusal surpassed any nightmare I could have imagined in my 60 years of life. Ethan, my only son, the boy I carried for 9 months and raised alone after his father died, grabbed my arm with a strength I did not recognize as human. His wife, Brenda, screamed behind him with a sharp, desperate voice, ordering him to take my phone before I called anyone. I tried to pull away, twisting my body toward the door, but he yanked harder. Then I heard the sound. A dry snap, like breaking a dried branch with your hands. My left arm just gave way. The pain arrived 3 seconds later. A white-hot, searing wave that shot up from my wrist to my shoulder and exploded in my head like fireworks. I fell to my knees on the living room floor, the same floor I had mopped that morning, thinking I would be receiving my son for a civilized conversation. The phone flew out of my right hand and bounced under the sofa. Ethan froze, staring at my arm which hung at an impossible angle, his mouth open and his hands still extended in front of him as if he couldn't believe what they had just done. Brenda stopped screaming. The silence that fell over the living room was worse than any insult they had thrown at me in the last few hours. I breathed in short gasps, trying not to move because every millimeter of movement sent electrical shocks through my entire arm. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but they weren't just from pain. They were from betrayal, from disbelief, from seeing my own son transformed into a violent stranger I didn't know. Ethan took a step back and ran his hands through his hair. His lips were trembling. Brenda looked at him, then looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that chilled my blood more than the pain. It wasn't regret. It was panic. Panic about the consequences. Panic about this getting out. Panic about losing control of the situation they had so carefully orchestrated for months. I tried to speak, but only a moan escaped. My arm pulsed with its own sick heartbeat. I could feel it swelling inside the sleeve of my blouse. Ethan crouched down in front of me, extending his hands, not daring to touch me. Mom, I didn't mean to. You moved. Oh God, Mom. His voice sounded distant, muffled by the ringing in my ears. Brenda remained standing by the window, biting her lower lip, and I could see her brain working at full speed, looking for a way out, looking for a way to twist this into something that wasn't what it really was. A son breaking his elderly mother's arm because she refused to hand over $180,000. 20 minutes later, they were both kneeling in front of me in the emergency room of the hospital, begging for forgiveness between sobs, while a nurse prepared the X-ray room and a young, unfriendly-looking doctor quietly asked me if I wanted him to call the police. Brenda cried with a drama that would have won awards on Broadway, clinging to my good hand, begging me to understand that it had been an accident. Ethan couldn't even look me in the eye. He trembled like a frightened child, muttering apologies that sounded hollow and late. But it was already too late for apologies. It was already too late for crocodile tears and empty promises. Something had broken in that room besides my bone. Something that had been cracking for months, ever since the day I told them about the sale of my house. From the moment they saw that money not as the fruit of their mother's 40 years of work, but as a solution to their financial problems, as something that belonged to them by right of blood. While I waited to be taken for X-rays, with my arm immobilized in a temporary sling and a dose of pain medication running through my veins, my mind began to process. I couldn't understand how I had gotten here, how the sweet routine of my quiet life had turned into this nightmare, how the son I raised with so much sacrifice now looked at me with eyes full of fear and desperation, not for my pain, but for the consequences he would face. The nurse approached with a clipboard in her hands and asked if I had anyone else to call. Someone I trusted, someone who could be with me. I nodded weakly and whispered a name. Olivia Peterson, my neighbour, my friend. The only person in this world who had warned me this could happen. The only one who saw what I refused to see for so long. Brenda tried to protest when the nurse dialed the number. She said they would stay with me, that they were my family, that no one else was necessary. But the doctor interrupted her with a firm, professional voice, explaining that since the patient had suffered a severe fracture during a domestic altercation, hospital protocol required the presence of an independent witness. Brenda's face crumpled. Ethan closed his eyes as if he wanted to disappear. Olivia arrived 40 minutes later, her hair still wet from the shower, and an expression of contained fury that would have scared anyone. She hugged me carefully, avoiding my injured arm, and whispered in my ear with a trembling voice that everything was going to be all right, that she was here, that I was no longer alone. Then she turned to Ethan and Brenda with a look that could have melted steel. "Get out of here, now!" Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but Olivia raised a hand. "I called Leo Miller. He's on his way. If you're still here when he arrives, I promise you won't leave this hospital without handcuffs on your wrists." The lawyer's name fell upon them like a bucket of ice water. Brenda paled. Ethan swallowed hard. They exchanged a quick look, one of those silent communications that couples who have been together for years have, and then Brenda took Ethan by the arm and dragged him toward the exit. Before crossing the door, my son turned one last time. His eyes were red and swollen. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but no sound came out. He simply lowered his head and disappeared down the hall. Olivia sat next to me on the gurney and took my good hand in hers. She didn't say anything. Words weren't needed at that moment. Just her presence was enough. I leaned my head against her shoulder and finally allowed the crying to come out. Not the silent, contained crying from the living room, but the deep, heartbreaking cry of a mother who has just realized that her son no longer exists. At least not the son she knew. 6 months before my arm broke in that apartment, my life was so predictable that I could anticipate every moment of the day as if reading a script written decades ago. I woke up at 6 in the morning without needing an alarm, brewed coffee in the same American coffee maker I bought on my honeymoon with Robert, and sat on the back porch to watch the sun gild the leaves of the lemon tree I planted when Ethan was 5 years old. The house where I lived for 32 years was large, too big for a single 60-year-old woman with knees that creaked when climbing stairs, and a back that protested every time I tried to clean the upstairs windows. It had 4 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, a yard that was once my pride, but which I now only managed to maintain halfway, and a spacious kitchen where Robert used to dance with me while we cooked on Sundays. Robert died 5 years ago of a massive heart attack while mowing the lawn one Saturday afternoon. He fell among the azaleas he himself had planted. He didn't even have time to call me. I was the one who found him 2 hours later when I went out to bring him lemonade. He still had the pruning shears in his hand. After his death, the house stopped feeling like a home and started feeling like a mausoleum full of memories that haunted me at every corner. His coffee mug was still on the second shelf of the kitchen. His bathrobe hung behind the bathroom door. His gardening books piled next to his favorite armchair. For the first 2 years, I couldn't move anything. It was as if by leaving everything in its place, I could keep him alive in some way. But time does curious things with pain. It softens the edges. It turns it into something you can live with instead of something that suffocates you. By the 3rd year, I started donating his clothes. By the 4th, I gave his garden tools to Mr. Wallace, the neighbour on the corner. By the 5th, I could finally sit in his armchair without bursting into tears. My routine became simple and methodical. Breakfast at 7, soap opera at 9 while folding laundry, grocery shopping on Tuesdays and Fridays, visit to the cemetery on Sundays after church, phone call with Ethan on Wednesday nights, brief conversations where he told me little, and I pretended not to notice his disinterest. Dinner at 6, television until 10, bed. Olivia Peterson lived in the house next door for 15 years. She was 2 years younger than me, also a widow, with 3 adult children who visited her every weekend loaded with noisy grandchildren. We became friends out of necessity at first. She needed someone to water her plants when she traveled to visit her daughter in Texas. I needed someone to help me change the light bulbs in the high ceiling that I could no longer reach without getting dizzy. But over time, that friendship of convenience turned into something deeper. Olivia was one of those women who say exactly what they think, no matter if it hurts. She had no filter between her brain and her mouth, and I found that refreshing after a lifetime of being diplomatic and measuring every word so as not to offend anyone. We had coffee together every afternoon at 4 o'clock, sometimes at her house, sometimes at mine. We talked about everything and nothing, about the rising grocery prices every week, about the neighbor across the street who had a lover 30 years younger, about our children, about our dead husbands, about what we would have done differently if we could go back. It was Olivia who first suggested I sell the house. "Ellie, this house is consuming you," she told me one March afternoon while sipping her latte. "Look at it. Look at how much it costs you to maintain it. The yard is halfway cared for. There are entire rooms you don't even use. The stairs are killing your knees. Why are you clinging to so much empty space?" "It's my home," I answered automatically, though even as I said it, I knew it sounded hollow. "I raised Ethan here. I lived here with Robert. All my memories are here." "The memories are here," Olivia said, pointing to her head. "And here," she added, pointing to her heart. "You don't need 30-year-old walls to keep them. What you need is a place that is yours, something manageable, something where you can live instead of just survive." Her words stayed with me for weeks. I started seeing the house with different eyes, the leaks in the roof that I couldn't afford to fix, the peeling paint on the windows, the water heater that threatened to die at any moment, the utility bill that ate up half of my retirement check every month just to heat and cool empty rooms. One April morning, I woke up with a strange clarity. I looked around my bedroom, that enormous room with the closet full of Robert's clothes that I never finished donating. And I knew Olivia was right. I wasn't living. I was being the custodian of a museum dedicated to a life that no longer existed. I called a real estate agency that same week. An efficient young woman named Sarah Jenkins came to evaluate the property. She walked through every room with a tablet in her hands, taking notes and photos, making positive comments about the high ceilings and the privileged location just 3 blocks from the town park. "Mrs. Foster, this property is in a highly sought-after area," she explained while we had tea in the kitchen. "With the size of the lot and the solid construction, I'm sure we can get an excellent price. I'd say between $170,000 and $200,000, depending on how fast you want to sell." The number left me breathless. When Robert and I bought this house 3 decades ago, we paid $45,000 and thought we were making the deal of our lives. Now it was worth 4 times more. It was more money than I had ever had in my hands, more money than I ever imagined having. "And what would you do with that money?" Sarah asked me with a kind smile. "Do you have plans?" The truth is, I hadn't thought beyond the sale itself. But in that moment, sitting in my kitchen with this young professional looking at me with expectation, I began to dream. A small apartment in a building with an elevator, No stairs to climb, no yard to maintain. Something cozy and modern and with large windows and lots of light. And with the remaining money, well, I could live comfortably the rest of my days without worrying about every cent. I want something simpler, I finally told her. Something that is just for me. Sarah smiled as if she understood exactly what I meant. We put the house on the market 2 weeks later. The response was immediate. 3 families came to see it the first weekend. By Monday, I already had 2 offers on the table. By Wednesday, I had accepted an offer of $182,000 from a young couple with 2 children who fell in love with the yard and the lemon tree. That's when I called Ethan to tell him the news. It was a Wednesday night, our usual weekly call. He sounded distracted as always, responding with one-word answers while I told him about my week. But when I mentioned that I had sold the house, the tone of his voice changed completely. You sold the house? The house where I grew up? Yes, son. It's too big for me alone. I can't keep it up anymore. And why didn't you consult me first? It's my house too. All my childhood memories are there. His reaction surprised me. Ethan hadn't set foot in this house in more than a year. He didn't even come to visit me for Thanksgiving. But now, suddenly, he was full of nostalgia and hurt feelings. Ethan, honey, you have your own life, your own home. This house is consuming me, and I need something more manageable. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard a female voice in the background. Brenda. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but the tone was urgent. Ethan cleared his throat. And how much did you get for the sale, Mum? I should have felt the alarm then. I should have noticed how his interest shifted from sentimental to practical in a second. But he was my son, my only son, and I still believed his concern was genuine. $182,000. It's much more than I expected. Another silence. Then Brenda spoke louder in the background. Ethan coughed. That's a lot of money, Mum. Do you know what you're going to do with it? Buy a smaller apartment, something comfortable, and with what's left over, live peacefully. Mum, we need to talk. Brenda and I have some ideas that could help you invest that money intelligently. You can't just leave it in the bank. Inflation will eat it up. You need financial advice. Ethan, I know how to manage my money. I know, Mum, I know. But this is different. It's a significant amount. Let us help you. We're family. We'll come by next weekend to talk about this calmly, okay? Brenda is really excited to see you. I hung up the phone with a strange feeling in my stomach. Ethan hadn't come to visit me in months, and now suddenly he was excited to spend the weekend at home. Brenda, who barely spoke to me at family gatherings, was excited to see me. Olivia, who had heard my side of the conversation from her chair on the porch, looked at me with her eyebrows raised. Here comes the trouble, she simply said. Don't be dramatic, I replied, though a part of me knew she was right. The following Saturday, Ethan and Brenda arrived at 10 o'clock in the morning. I had spent all Friday morning cleaning the house from top to bottom, preparing the guest room that hadn't been used since last Thanksgiving, and cooking my son's favourite dishes. I made his beef pot roast with potatoes that he loved as a child. I prepared rice pilaf. I baked a lemon meringue pie. The kitchen smelled like home and family. When I heard the car pull up in front of the house, I felt a genuine excitement. It had been so long since Ethan's last visit, so long since I could hug him and see his face in person instead of through a phone screen during our brief weekly calls. I went out to the porch, wiping my hands on my apron, smiling like a fool. Ethan got out of the car, looking tired. He had deep dark circles under his eyes and had gained weight around his stomach. His shirt was wrinkled, as if he had slept in it. But when he saw me, he forced a wide smile and opened his arms. "Mom, I missed you." I hugged him tight, breathing in the smell of his expensive cologne that he probably couldn't afford. Brenda got out of the passenger side wearing high heels and a tight dress, completely inappropriate for a casual weekend visit. She wore enormous sunglasses that covered half her face, and a designer bag that I recognized from the windows of stores I never entered because a single item cost more than my monthly retirement check. She greeted me with a strained smile, offering her cheek for an air kiss that barely brushed my skin. "You look so pretty. The house looks great." Liar. She had never told me I looked pretty, and she knew perfectly well the house was in the same state as always, maybe a little more neglected because my energy wasn't the same anymore. I let them in and noticed how Brenda looked at every corner with assessing eyes. She stopped in front of the china cabinet, where I kept the porcelain dishware I inherited from my mother. She ran a finger along the carved wooden frame of the entryway mirror. She looked up at the stairs with a calculating expression. "It must be hard climbing those stairs every day at your age," she commented with fake concern. "I manage," I replied, ignoring the comment about my age. I was 60, not 90. We had lunch in the dining room, something I hadn't done since last Thanksgiving. I put out my best tablecloth, the white lace one I only used for special occasions. I served the food on the good dishes. Ethan ate with appetite, praising every bite as he used to when he was a child. Brenda picked at her food, pushing the potatoes around her plate, while looking at her phone under the table every few minutes. It was after lunch, when we were having coffee in the living room, that the real conversation began. Ethan cleared his throat several times before speaking, a nervous habit he had since childhood when he was about to ask for something he knew he shouldn't. "Mum, about the house money. Brenda and I have been researching investment options that could triple that capital in less than 5 years." Brenda leaned forward with rehearsed enthusiasm. "Yes, Ellie, we have a friend who is a financial advisor. He works with high-yield investment funds. It's an incredible opportunity, but you need to act fast because these opportunities don't last." I sipped my coffee slowly, looking at them over the rim of the cup. "I'm not interested in risky investments. That money is for my retirement, to live peacefully." Brenda's smile wavered. "It's not risky. It's completely safe. You just need to trust us. We're your family." "Besides, Mum," Ethan added, $180,000 is a lot of money to just have sitting in a bank account. Banks are failing. There are robberies, break-ins. It's not safe. My bank has been fine for the last 30 years. "Things change," Brenda insisted. Her tone was beginning to lose its manufactured sweetness. "You don't understand how the modern financial world works. No offense, but your generation isn't familiar with these things. That's why we're here. To help you. To protect you." I felt a pang of irritation. "I appreciate your concern, but I can handle my own financial affairs." Ethan exchanged a look with Brenda. She nodded almost imperceptibly. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Mum, there's something else. Brenda and I are going through a difficult time financially. We have some debts that we urgently need to resolve." There it was, the truth finally surfacing like oil floating on water. "What kind of debts?" "Credit cards, mainly," Ethan admitted without looking me in the eyes. "And a car loan. And some overdue mortgage payments. It's nothing we can't handle. But if we had access to a portion of your money, just as a temporary loan, we could resolve everything and then pay you back with interest." "How much?" Brenda answered before Ethan. $50,000 would get us out of trouble completely. We would pay you back in 1 year, a year and a half maximum. $50,000, almost 1/3 of my capital. To pay off debts they probably accumulated buying things they didn't need with money they didn't have. No, I said simply. Brenda blinked as if she had misheard. Pardon? I said no. That money is for my future, for my security. It is not a family emergency fund. Brenda's mask of sweetness fell completely. Security? You're going to buy an apartment that will probably cost you $60,000 at most. What are you going to do with the other $120,000? Sit on top of it until you die? Brenda, Ethan warned, but without much conviction. No, Ethan. Someone has to tell the truth here. She turned to me with eyes gleaming with barely contained rage. Your son is asking you for help. Your only son. The son you raised and who took care of you when you were widowed, and you refuse to help him when you have more money than you'll need for the rest of your life. I got up from my chair, feeling the blood rush to my face. No one took care of me when I was widowed. I took care of myself. And Ethan is 35 years old. He is an adult man with a job and responsibilities. If he has debts, it's because he made irresponsible financial decisions. Ethan stood up too, his hands raised in a conciliatory gesture. Mum, please. It doesn't have to be 50,000. It could be 30, 20 even. Something to help us breathe. The answer is no, Ethan. I'm sorry. Brenda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping the wooden floor. This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. You know what? We don't need you. We'll manage alone as we always have. Let's go, Ethan. But Ethan didn't move. He stood there, looking at me with a mixture of disappointment and something darker that I didn't want to identify at that moment. Seriously, Mum, after everything, after what everything, Ethan? After raising you, giving you an education, loving you unconditionally? None of those things obligates me to finance your unsustainable lifestyle. He left without saying another word. Brenda followed him, throwing me a look of pure venom before exiting. The door closed louder than necessary. I heard the car start and drive away, leaving tire marks on the driveway. I stood in the middle of the living room, looking at the dirty lunch dishes, the food I prepared with so much love now turned to ashes in my mouth. Olivia appeared in the back door seconds later. She had been in her yard, but clearly had heard everything. I warned you, she said softly. I know. Are you okay? I wasn't sure how to answer. I had defended my money and my boundaries, but in doing so, I felt I had lost something more valuable. I nodded anyway, because it was easier than explaining the emptiness I felt in my chest. This isn't over, Olivia said. They'll be back, and next time it won't be with pretty words. She was right. But at that moment, exhausted and hurt, I just wanted to believe that my son still had some of the goodness I raised him with. I wanted to believe he would reflect and understand. How naive I was. For 2 weeks after that disastrous visit, I didn't hear from Ethan. No call, no text message, not even on our usual Wednesday. The silence was deafening and ate at me inside in ways I didn't want to admit. Every time the phone rang, my heart jumped, hoping it was him. But it never was. Olivia told me to let him go, that if Ethan wanted to behave like a spoiled child, that was his problem. But a mother can't just turn off love like a light switch. I spent nights awake wondering if I had been too harsh, if I should have lent him at least some money, if I was being selfish. Then, one Saturday morning, 3 weeks after their last visit, they arrived without warning. I was in the yard, pruning the faded roses when I heard the car. This time they got out with bags from the expensive bakery downtown and bright smiles as if nothing had happened. Brenda wore jeans and a casual blouse, more appropriate than her last outfit. Ethan carried a bouquet of flowers, my favorite, white daisies. Mom, Ethan said, approaching with open arms, I am so sorry. I was an idiot. I shouldn't have pressured you like that. You can do whatever you want with your money. It's yours and only yours. I wanted to believe him. God knows how much I wanted to believe him. I hugged him, and the smell of his cologne reminded me of when he was little and ran to me after school. Brenda kissed my cheek with what seemed like genuine affection. We brought pastries and gourmet coffee, she announced cheerfully. Can we have breakfast together, as a family, without talking about money or anything unpleasant? Just spend quality time. I agreed because I am weak when it comes to my son, because 3 weeks of silence had left me vulnerable, because I desperately wanted to believe we still had a salvageable relationship. We had breakfast on the back porch. Brenda talked about her job at a clothing boutique. Ethan told funny stories about his office colleagues. They asked me about my apartment search and seemed genuinely interested when I showed them photos of a place I had seen the week before. A small 2-bedroom apartment in a building with an elevator, near the market, and only 10 minutes from Olivia's house. It looks perfect for you, Mum, Ethan said sincerely. You're going to look great there. It was a pleasant morning, almost normal. I allowed myself to relax and enjoy their company. After breakfast, Brenda offered to help me wash the dishes, while Ethan checked a leak in the upstairs bathroom that I had casually mentioned. Ellie, Brenda began while drying a plate. Her voice was soft, almost shy. I want to apologize for how I behaved last time. I was stressed about our problems and took it out on you. It wasn't right. It's forgotten, I replied, though it wasn't completely true. It's just, sometimes I worry so much about Ethan. He works so hard and it never seems to be enough. And I work too, but the money just disappears. The rent, the car, the utilities, the food. Everything is so expensive now. There was something in her tone that made me drop my guard. She sounded tired, genuinely overwhelmed, not like the calculating woman from 3 weeks ago. I understand things are tough, I said, but you have to learn to live within your means. I know, you're right. She dried another plate in silence before continuing. Can I ask you something? No pressure, just curiosity. You already know exactly how much you're going to spend on the new apartment. I should have seen the trap. I should have remained silent. But I had lowered my defenses, and she sounded so innocent. The one I like costs $65,000, with closing costs and moving, probably $70,000 in total. Then you'd have over $100,000 left, Brenda calculated, as if she were just doing casual math. That's wonderful, Ellie. Really, you're going to be very comfortable. She continued washing dishes and didn't say anything else about the subject. I thought maybe, just maybe, they had really matured and accepted my decision. How foolish I was. The visits became regular after that. Every weekend they showed up with some excuse. They brought food. They helped with house chores. Ethan fixed the leak, changed light bulbs, cleaned the gutters. Brenda helped me pack boxes with things I would donate before the move. They offered to drive me to see apartments. They accompanied me to the bank when I went to organize the transfer of the sale money. They seemed attentive, loving, present. Everything they hadn't been in years. Olivia didn't buy it. They're planning something, she warned me every time she saw them arrive. No one changes like that all of a sudden, especially not after showing their true colors so clearly. Maybe they matured, I argued. Maybe they realized their attitude was wrong. Or maybe they're waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. I didn't want to listen to her. I wanted to enjoy having my son back. I wanted to believe in second chances and redemption. It was during one of those visits, one Sunday afternoon while organizing documents in my home office, that Brenda brought up the topic again. but this time with a different approach. Ellie, have you thought about making a will? You know, to make sure everything is in order. The question took me by surprise. I have a basic will I made years ago. Everything goes to Ethan anyway. He's my only child. Sure, Brenda nodded. But with so much money now, maybe you should update it. And also think about a power of attorney, just in case something happens to you and you can't make decisions for yourself. It's just a precaution. Power of attorney. Yes, you give someone you trust the legal authority to handle your affairs if you become incapacitated. It's standard for people your age, just to be prepared. I don't plan on becoming incapacitated soon, I said with an uncomfortable laugh. No one plans anything. That's why it's important to be prepared. Brenda pulled some papers out of her bag. In fact, I brought some forms. They're generic, nothing official yet. But we could fill them out together and then take them to a notary, just so you have everything in order before the move. I took the papers and looked at them with distrust. They were general power of attorney forms. Why do you carry this with you? Because I worry about you, she answered without missing a beat. And because I know these things are easy to put off until it's too late. I need to think about it. Of course, no rush. Keep them and review them when you have time. That night, after they left, I showed the papers to Olivia. She read them with a frown, flipping through each page with growing alarm. Ellie, these forms would give whoever you designate total control over your finances. They could move your money, sell your property, make medical decisions. Everything. It's just in case something happens to me. And who do you think they expect you to name? Me. Olivia put the papers down on the table. They are going to pressure you to put Ethan, and the moment you sign this, your money stops being yours. I can't live distrusting my own son. It's not about distrust. It's about protection. Ethan already showed he's willing to manipulate you for money. Brenda is orchestrating all of this. Don't you see it? The constant visits, the help, the false repentance. It's all to gain your trust again. So you drop your guard enough to sign something that gives them access to your money. I wanted to tell her she was exaggerating, that she was seeing conspiracies where there was only genuine family concern. But something in my stomach was twisting uncomfortably, because deep down, a part of me knew Olivia was right. I hid the forms at the bottom of a drawer and decided not to mention them again. But Brenda didn't forget. In every subsequent visit, she found subtle ways to bring up the subject. Have you thought about the documents? Do you want me to go with you to the notary? It would be so easy to resolve it in one afternoon. The pressure was constant, but disguised as loving concern. And every time I refused or changed the subject, I saw a flicker of frustration in her eyes that disappeared as quickly as it appeared. The trap was closing, and I, foolish me, kept pretending I didn't see it. The sale of my house was finalized on a rainy Tuesday in June. I signed the last papers at the notary's office, while the young couple who bought my home smiled excitedly across the table. They had 2 small children who ran around the waiting room, full of energy and plans for the yard where my Ethan once played. I wished them luck and tried not to feel the weight of 32 years of memories leaving my hands with every signature. The money was transferred to my bank account that same afternoon. $182,000. It was the largest amount I had ever seen under my name. I sat in the car outside the bank for 20 minutes, looking at the transfer receipt on my phone, feeling a strange mix of relief and terror. I was free. I was vulnerable. I was powerful. I was a target. I didn't tell Ethan the money was already in my account. Something stopped me. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was the constant echo of Olivia's warnings. Or maybe it was simply that I wanted to enjoy a few days of peace before the renewed pressure began. But Brenda had ways of finding things out. 2 days after the transfer, my phone rang at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was Ethan, with a strangely urgent voice. "Mum, we need to talk. Today. It's important." "What happened? Is everything all right?" "Yes, no, everything's fine. We just need to see you. We'll be there in an hour." He hung up before I could answer. They arrived 45 minutes later. This time they didn't bring pastries or flowers. Brenda carried a thick folder under her arm and an expression of determination that made me nervous from the moment she got out of the car. They sat in my living room without the previous courtesy of warm greetings. Ethan looked agitated, rubbing his hands repeatedly. Brenda opened the folder on the coffee table and took out several documents. "Ellie, we're going to be direct because we respect you too much to keep beating around the bush," Brenda began, with a business tone I had never heard from her. "We know you already have the sale money, and we need to talk about how to properly protect it." "My money is perfectly safe in the bank." "That's what you think," Ethan interrupted. "But Mum, banks aren't safe like they used to be. There are failures. There are limits on deposit insurance. If something happens to your bank, you would only recover a fraction." "I've researched all of this," Brenda continued, pointing to the documents. "The best option is to diversify. Put part of the money in a joint investment account where I can help you monitor the growth, another part in a mutual fund, and the rest in a high-yield savings account." "Joint account," I repeated slowly. "With you or with Ethan?" "We're your family. Someone has to help you with this because, let's be honest, you don't have experience managing this amount of money." I felt the rage starting to boil in my chest. "I have managed money my whole life. I maintained a house, raised a son, paid bills for decades." "That's different," Brenda said with barely hidden condescension. "This is a larger sum that requires financial knowledge that you frankly don't have." "The answer is no. I'm not putting my money in any joint account with anyone." Ethan leaned forward, his hands clasped as if praying. "Mum, please, just listen to us. We're not trying to take anything from you. We're trying to protect you." "Protect me? Or protect yourselves from the fact that you don't have access to my money?" The silence that followed was tense and dangerous. Brenda closed the folder with a sharp movement. "You know what? I'm tired of being diplomatic. That money should belong to the family. Robert worked for that house too. Ethan grew up in that house. He has as much right to that money as you do." "Robert was my husband. The house was in my name. The money is mine." "But when you die, it's going to be Ethan's anyway," Brenda countered. "So why not share it now when he really needs it?" "Because I'm alive, and I plan to be for many more years." Ethan stood up abruptly. "This is incredible. All my life I have respected you. I have honored you. I have been a good son. And now when I ask you for a little help, you turn your back on me." "I gave you my whole life," I replied, standing up too. "I gave you education, home, unconditional love. I paid for your college. I supported you when you lost 3 consecutive jobs because you couldn't get there on time. I lent you and Brenda money 2 years ago for your car down payment, money you never returned to me. I'm not turning my back on you. I'm setting boundaries." "Boundaries," Brenda spat, "are what selfish people use as an excuse not to help their family." "Then I guess I'm selfish." Brenda picked up her bag and the folder. "You know what, Ellie? When you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you, I hope your money can buy you the company you'll need, because we won't be there." "Brenda, that's enough," Ethan muttered, but without real conviction. "No, Ethan. She needs to hear the truth. She is alone. She has no one but us, and she's throwing that away for money." "You are the ones destroying our relationship for money," I replied with a trembling voice. I am just protecting what belongs to me. They left amidst slamming doors and bitter words. Ethan didn't look me in the eyes on the way out. Brenda shot me a look of pure hatred that made me take a step back. The car roared away violently, leaving tire marks in the driveway for the second time. I stood trembling in the middle of the living room. Olivia appeared minutes later, as she always seemed to do when I needed her most. Come, she said simply, taking my arm. Let's go to my house. I'm going to make you tea, and we're going to call Leo, the lawyer. Yes, because this isn't going to end here, Ellie, and you need legal protection before they try something more drastic. They won't do anything drastic. He's my son. Olivia looked at me with deep sadness in her eyes. Your son just threatened you with abandonment when you might need him most. His wife just accused you of being selfish for protecting your own money. What more do you need to see? I didn't have an answer for that, because the truth was too painful to admit. My son, the baby I breastfed, the boy I comforted during nightmares, the young man I applauded at his graduation, had become someone I didn't recognize. And his wife had turned him into someone capable of emotionally extorting his own mother. We went to Olivia's house. She prepared chamomile tea while I sat in her kitchen and trying to process what had just happened. Then she called Leo Miller, an attorney who had helped her family with inheritance matters a few years ago. Leo arrived that afternoon. He was a man in his mid-40s, with premature grey hair and a serious but kind expression. He listened to my whole story without interrupting, taking occasional notes in a notebook. Mrs. Foster, he said when I finished, you need to take immediate steps to protect your assets. First, I want you to change your bank passwords today, all of them, and enable two-factor authentication on all your accounts. Do you think they would try to get into my accounts? I don't know what they would try, but it's better to prevent. Second, I need you to bring me any documents they gave you to sign, any paper you touched in their presence. I need to review them. Only the power of attorney forms that I never signed. Bring them. Sometimes people forge signatures. It's more common than you think, especially in cases of family financial abuse. The word abuse hit me like a slap. That was what was happening. Abuse. From my own son. Third, Leo continued, I am going to draft clear documents establishing that your money is exclusively yours and that no one has the right or access to it. We are also going to create an updated will that leaves everything in order according to your real wishes, not what others expect. And finally, I am going to give you my personal number. If they pressure you again, if they threaten you again, if you feel danger in any way, call me immediately. Danger? Ethan would never physically hurt me. Leo and Olivia exchanged a look I didn't like. Mrs. Foster, Leo said softly, financial abuse often escalates to other types of abuse. I'm not saying it will happen, but you need to be prepared and protected. That night, alone in my nearly empty house, with boxes everywhere waiting for the move that would happen in 2 weeks, I allowed myself to cry. I cried for the son I lost, for the violation that could never be repaired, for the innocence of believing that blood is always thicker than greed. And as I cried, my phone rang. It was a text message from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. I promise you. The unsigned text message kept me awake that night. I stayed up looking at the ceiling, listening to every creak of the old house, every sound of the wind against the windows. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I picked up my phone and forwarded the message to Leo with trembling hands. He replied within minutes, despite the hour. Save this message. Do not delete it. It's evidence. Do you have any idea who could have sent it? I didn't need to guess. I knew exactly who was behind those threatening words, but a part of me still resisted believing that my son or his wife were capable of something like that. The following days were a strange mix of panic and determination. I followed Leo's instructions to the letter. I changed all my passwords. I activated alerts on my bank account for any transaction greater than $100. Leo reviewed the power of attorney forms Brenda had given me and confirmed they were legitimate, but that had I signed them, it would have given total control over my finances to whoever I designated. These documents are dangerous in the wrong hands, he explained while reviewing them in his office. Did they ever mention wanting you to sign them with Ethan as the agent? Brenda insinuated it several times. She said it was normal, that it was for my own protection. Leo shook his head. There is nothing normal about this. These are classic financial manipulation tactics. First, they gain your trust with visits and help. Then they start planting seeds of doubt about your ability to handle your own affairs. Finally, they pressure you to sign documents that give them legal control. We drafted a new will where I left everything clearly established. A portion for Ethan, yes, because he was still my son, but also donations to charities and a considerable amount for Olivia for years of genuine friendship. We established a trust that no one could touch until after my death, and that would have legal supervision to prevent manipulation. You don't think I'm overreacting? I asked him as I signed the documents before a notary. Mrs. Foster, in my 20 years of legal practice, I have seen children steal from dying parents. I have seen families destroyed by inheritances. I have seen the elderly living in misery while their children spend their money. It is never an overreaction to protect yourself. That same week, I received 3 more calls from unknown numbers. The first time I answered, hoping it was about my move or the new apartment. It was a masculine voice I didn't recognize, distorted, telling me that stubborn old women ended up alone and forgotten. I hung up, trembling. The second call was a female voice, definitely not Brenda, but with the same threatening tone, suggesting that accidents happened all the time to older people who lived alone. The third call was silence, just heavy breathing for 30 seconds before they hung up. Leo advised me to report it to the police. I went to the station and spoke with a young officer who took my statement with a bored expression, as if he heard these kinds of stories every day. He probably did. Do you have proof of who is making these calls? He asked, while typing on his computer without looking at me. They are private numbers, but I'm sure it is my daughter-in-law or someone she hired. Do you have proof of that? No, but... Then I can't do much, Mum. We can document the complaint, but without concrete evidence of who is threatening you, my hands are tied. I suggest you block unknown numbers and consider changing your phone number. I left the station feeling more vulnerable than when I entered. The system that was supposed to protect me couldn't do anything until something really bad happened. I had to wait to be a victim before receiving help. Olivia became my constant shadow. She insisted on staying with me during the nights, bringing an inflatable mattress that she put in my living room. She accompanied me to the bank, to the supermarket, to see the new apartment. She never left me alone for more than a few hours. This is ridiculous, I protested one afternoon while we packed boxes in my room. You can't put your life on hold for me. My life is exactly where it needs to be, taking care of my friend. And my children, your grandchildren, understand the situation and agree that you shouldn't be alone right now. The move was scheduled for the following Friday. I had hired a small moving company, recommended by Leo. 2 trustworthy men who started loading my belongings early in the morning. Seeing my furniture leave through the door was more painful than I anticipated. Each piece carried memories. The table where Ethan did his homework. The sofa where Robert and I cuddled up to watch movies. The bed where I slept next to my husband for 25 years. We were halfway through the move when Ethan and Brenda showed up without warning. I saw them park from the upstairs window, and my heart sank uncomfortably. I walked down the stairs slowly, preparing for another confrontation. Ethan looked terrible. He had red, swollen eyes, deep dark circles, an unshaven beard. Brenda, on the other hand, was impeccable as always, but there was something cold in her expression that gave me goosebumps. "Mom," Ethan said in a hoarse voice, "you can't move without at least saying goodbye to us." "I didn't know you wanted to say goodbye after your last message." "What message?" he asked, genuinely confused or acting very well. "The threatening message. You're going to regret this." Ethan vehemently shook his head. "I didn't send you any message, Mum, I swear. I have no idea what you're talking about." I looked at Brenda. She held my gaze without blinking, defiant. That's when I knew with certainty that it had been her, but I couldn't prove it. "Look," Brenda said with an exaggerated sigh, "we came to make peace. Ethan has been devastated these weeks. He barely eats. He barely sleeps. You're killing him, Ellie." "I'm not killing him. He's doing this to himself." "You're his mother. You have the power to fix this." "Fix it how? By giving you my money?" Ethan approached, his hands extended in a plea. "We don't want all your money, Mum. We just need help. We are about to lose the car. The bank threatened us with foreclosure. Brenda could lose her job because she can't get there without the car. Everything is falling apart." I felt a pang of pain in my chest. It was my son, vulnerable and desperate in front of me. All my maternal instincts screamed at me to help him, to fix his pain as I used to do when he was a child. But then I remembered Leo's words. Financial abuse works because they appeal to your maternal love. They fabricate crises. They create urgency. They pressure you to make emotional decisions instead of rational ones. "How much do you owe?" I asked, hating myself for asking. Brenda's eyes shone with barely hidden triumph. "Between the car and the overdue mortgage, $38,000 would put us completely back on track." $38,000, more than most people earned in a year, more than half of what I plan to live on for the next few years. "No," I said, though the word hurt me physically. "I can't give you that amount." "You can't, or you don't want to?" Brenda asked with venom in her voice. "Both things. That money is for my future, for my security. It's not a rescue fund for your financial mistakes." Ethan dropped his hands to his sides. Something changed in his expression. The plea transformed into something darker. "You know what, Mum? You're right. It's your money. Do what you want with it. But don't expect me to keep acting like your son, when you clearly aren't acting like my mother. Being your mother doesn't mean destroying my own life to save yours. It means being there when your family needs you. It means sacrifice, something you apparently no longer understand." Brenda took Ethan's arm. "Let's go, honey. We wasted our time coming here. Your mother has made it clear where her priorities are." They left, but this time there were no dramatic door slams or tire marks, just a cold, final silence that hurt more than any scream. I watched them walk away from the window and felt as if I was burying my son alive. Olivia appeared next to me. "You did the right thing." "Then why does it feel so bad?" "Because true love hurts. But protecting yourself isn't wrong, Ellie. It's never wrong." The move was completed without further incident. That night, I slept in my new apartment for the first time, surrounded by unopened boxes, in a bed that still smelled new, in a place where no memories haunted me. I should have felt relieved, free. Instead, I felt lonelier than ever in my life. 3 weeks passed in my new apartment. 3 weeks of absolute silence from Ethan. 3 weeks where I tried to convince myself that I had done the right thing, that setting boundaries was healthy, that protecting my future was not selfishness. Olivia came every day, sometimes just for coffee, other times to help me organize. Leo called every couple of days to check that everything was all right. I was adjusting to my new routine. The apartment was perfect for me. Compact, manageable, bright. From the living room window, I could see the park where children played in the afternoons. No stairs to climb, no yard to maintain, no empty rooms full of ghosts of the past. But peace doesn't last long when there are people determined to destroy it. It was a Thursday afternoon, around 5 o'clock. I had been to the supermarket and had just arrived with my shopping bags when I heard the intercom. The doorman, Mr. Johnson, informed me that my son was downstairs asking to come up. My heart raced. Part of me wanted to tell him not to let him in, but he was my son, and I still held a foolish hope that he had come to truly reconcile. "Let him up," I finally said. I opened the door and saw them step out of the elevator, Ethan and Brenda. But this time there were no false smiles or gifts of peace. Ethan had his jaw clenched and his fists closed at his sides. Brenda carried her large bag hanging from her shoulder and an expression of cold determination that made me instinctively step back. "We need to talk," Ethan said without even greeting me. "Inside. Now." Something in his tone alerted me. It was different, desperate, but also dangerous. I should have closed the door. I should have called security. But maternal instinct is stupid and powerful, so I let them in. They closed the door behind them. Brenda locked it. That small gesture chilled my blood. "What are you doing?" "What we should have done weeks ago," Brenda replied, taking some papers out of her bag. "You are going to sign these documents that give us access to your bank account, and you are going to transfer $50,000 to our account today. You're crazy if you think I'm going to do that." "You're not understanding," Ethan said, his voice trembling with contained emotion. "It's not a request, Mom. It's a demand. We need that money. They're going to take our house. They're going to take the car. Brenda is pregnant, and we don't have money for the doctor. We are sinking, and you sit here in your nice apartment with over $100,000 that you don't need." "Pregnant?" The news took me by surprise, but I immediately suspected. "How long?" "That doesn't matter," Brenda interrupted. "What matters is that you are going to help your family, or you are going to face the consequences." "You're threatening me." "We are giving you a chance to do the right thing," Ethan said, moving closer. "Sign the papers, make the transfer, and we can all move on as a family." My phone was in the kitchen, a few feet away. I started moving toward it, but Brenda stepped in my way. "Where do you think you're going?" "I need my phone. I'm calling Leo." "You're not calling anyone," Brenda spat. "That meddling lawyer has been filling your head with garbage, making you believe we're the bad guys when we only want the best for you. Get out of my apartment. Now." "Or what?" Brenda challenged, crossing her arms. "Are you going to call the police? Are you going to have your own son arrested?" Ethan ran his hands through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. "Mum, please, just sign the papers. It doesn't have to be like this." "I'm not signing anything, and if you don't leave this moment, yes, I am going to call the police." I moved quickly toward the kitchen, but Ethan was faster. He grabbed my arm, not forcefully yet, just stopping me. "Mum, wait. Reason with us." "Let go of me, Ethan." "Not until you listen." I tried to break free, but his grip tightened. Panic began to climb my throat. This was my son, but in his eyes I saw something I had never seen before. savage desperation, the look of a man on the edge of a cliff, willing to drag others down with him in his fall. "Ethan, you're hurting me." "Just sign the damn papers," he shouted, shaking me. "Sign and this ends." Brenda appeared with the documents and a pen. "Make it easy, Ellie. For all of us." "No." The word came out with more force than I felt. Brenda let out a sound of frustration and yelled at Ethan. "Then take her cell phone. We can't let her call anyone." Panic turned into terror when I saw Ethan look toward the kitchen where my phone was on the counter. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the decision forming. "Ethan, no," I pleaded. "Don't do this. We can still fix this. We can talk." But it was too late. He had crossed an invisible line in his mind. Brenda had won. Desperation had won. He dragged me toward the kitchen while I tried to resist. I managed to grab the door frame, but he pulled harder. "Let go of me," I screamed, hoping someone in the building would hear. Brenda ran and snatched my phone from the counter. "I got it. Now control her." Ethan shoved me against the wall, not violently but firmly, holding me there while Brenda put my phone in her bag. I gasped, my heart beating so fast I thought it would burst out of my chest. This wasn't my son. It couldn't be. The boy I raised would never be capable of this. "Brenda, give me the papers," Ethan ordered, his voice now mechanical, as if he were following a script. "We're going to do this civilly." "There's nothing civil about this," I said, tears streaming down my cheeks. "This is extortion. It's assault." "This is survival," Brenda replied, putting the papers on the kitchen table. "And you are going to cooperate, or things are going to get much worse." Ethan let go of me but stood between me and the exit. I stood there, trembling, looking at the documents on the table. Documents that would give them complete access to my money. Documents that would turn my financial security into their lifeline. "I won't sign," I repeated, although my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. That's when Brenda completely lost control. Her face contorted into a mask of rage. "You know what? I'm sick of your stubborn old woman refusal. Ethan, grab her hand and make her sign. I don't care how." "Brenda, we can't." "Do it," she screamed, "or we leave here with nothing and all of this will have been for nothing. Is that what you want? To lose the house? To live on the street? To lose your son?" I saw the exact moment Ethan made his decision. I saw the last spark of decency in his eyes go out. He approached me with renewed determination and extended his hand. "Give me your hand, Mom. Let's get this over with." "No." I spun around to run, to scream, to do anything. But he was faster. He grabbed my left arm with both hands and pulled back, trying to drag me toward the table. I resisted with all my strength, planting my feet, pulling in the opposite direction. "Ethan, let go! Not so hard!" Brenda yelled, but it was too late. There was a moment of maximum resistance, me pulling one way, him pulling the other, and then the world turned into white, blinding pain. I heard the snap before I felt it, a dry, horrible sound that shouldn't come from a human body. My arm gave way at an impossible angle, and the pain hit me like a freight train. I screamed. A scream that came from the deepest part of my being, a scream of physical pain, but also of absolute betrayal. I fell to my knees as my arm hung uselessly at my side, the pain throbbing in waves that blurred my vision. Ethan let go of me as if I had burned him. He stood there, looking at his own hands in horror. Brenda covered her mouth with her hands, all her bravado evaporating in a second. The silence that fell over the apartment was deafening. I could only hear my own ragged breathing, my involuntary groans of pain. The world had shrunk to my broken arm and the horrified face of my son. "Mom," Ethan whispered. "Oh God, Mom." I didn't mean to. You moved, I just. But his words sounded distant, muffled by the ringing in my ears and the fog of pain. I was broken. My own son had broken me. And as I fell further onto the cold floor of my new kitchen, I knew something else had broken too, something that could never be repaired. The pain was so intense that at times my vision completely darkened. I stayed there on the kitchen floor, holding my arm against my chest, while Ethan and Brenda looked at each other with growing panic on their faces. It wasn't regret I saw. It was fear, pure fear of the consequences. "We have to take her to the hospital," Brenda said with a sharp voice. "Now, before someone hears something." Ethan crouched down next to me, extending his hands, but not daring to touch me. "Mum, we're going to take you to the hospital. Everything's going to be fine. It was an accident. You understand it was an accident, right?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Each breath sent new waves of agony through my arm. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks as I tried not to move, because every millimeter of movement was torture. Brenda took my phone out of her bag and stared at it, calculating. "We can't call an ambulance. They'll ask too many questions. We'll take her." "And what are we going to say?" Ethan asked, his voice rising in pitch. "How are we going to explain this?" "We'll say she fell, that she tripped over a moving box, that we were helping her and she fell on her own." What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I had prepared a safety plan with Olivia days before. A simple but effective plan. Every time Ethan and Brenda came to visit me, I sent Olivia a text message with a key word. If she didn't receive another message from me saying everything was all right within 1 hour, she had instructions to call the police. More than an hour had already passed. Ethan tried to help me up, but I screamed in pain when he accidentally moved my arm. I'm sorry, he repeated like a broken mantra. He finally managed to get me standing by holding me on my good side. My legs barely supported me. The shock was starting to set in, making everything feel unreal and distant. Brenda opened the apartment door and looked down the hall. "It's clear. Come on, quick." They dragged me toward the elevator. In my mind, clouded by pain, I knew I shouldn't go with them. I knew that once they got me out of the building, they could completely control the narrative. But I had no strength to resist. My body was on autopilot, simply trying to survive the pain. The elevator doors opened just as we arrived. And there was Mr. Johnson, the building's doorman, an older man with a grey moustache who always greeted me with a smile. His smile froze when he saw me. "Mrs. Foster, what happened?" "She's fine. She fell," Brenda replied quickly. "We're taking her to the hospital." Mr. Johnson looked me directly in the eyes. I saw that he didn't believe her. I saw how he evaluated the situation, my arm hanging at that horrible angle, the tears on my face, the tension in Ethan and Brenda's bodies. "Maybe I should call an ambulance," he suggested, pulling his radio from his belt. "It's not necessary," Ethan insisted. "Our car is right here. It will be faster." But Mr. Johnson was already speaking into his radio, asking for emergency services to be called. Brenda muttered a curse under her breath. Ethan started sweating visibly. Then we heard the sirens. It wasn't an ambulance, it was police patrol cars. 2 of them pulled up in front of the building with their lights flashing. Olivia had kept her word. I watched Brenda's face turn from panic to absolute despair. Ethan closed his eyes as if he wanted to disappear. Mr. Johnson held his position between us and the exit, perfectly understanding what he was witnessing. 4 officers entered the lobby with their hands near their weapons, assessing the situation quickly. A female officer approached me directly. "Ma'am, you need help." I nodded, unable to speak due to pain and emotion. She looked at my arm and her expression hardened. She signaled to her partner, who immediately called a real ambulance. "Who are you two?" the larger officer asked, looking at Ethan and Brenda. "I'm her son," Ethan replied with a trembling voice. "She fell. We were going to take her to the hospital." "She fell?" the female officer repeated, looking at me. "Ma'am, is that true?" This was the moment where I could protect my son one last time, where I could follow the pattern of a lifetime of putting his needs before mine, where I could lie and allow this nightmare to continue. Or I could tell the truth. I looked at Ethan. His eyes silently pleaded with me. "Please, Mom. Please don't say anything. Protect me like you always have. Save me from the consequences of my actions." "No," I said with a broken but clear voice. "I didn't fall. He pulled my arm and broke it." Ethan let out a choked sound, something between a sob and a gasp. Brenda took a step back, ready to run, but an officer was already behind her, blocking the exit. "That's not true," Brenda screamed. "She's confused. The pain is making her delirious. We were just trying to help her." But Mr. Johnson spoke with a firm voice. "I heard screaming, screams of fear, and when they opened the door, she was crying and they were nervous. This was not an accident." The ambulance arrived minutes later. The paramedics immobilized my arm with extreme care while I moaned in pain. The female officer got in with me, while her partners stayed with Ethan and Brenda. "We're going to need your full statement at the hospital," she told me gently. "Is there anyone we can call? Someone who can be with you?" "Olivia Peterson," I murmured, giving her the number. As the ambulance sped away with sirens wailing, I looked out the back window. I saw Ethan in handcuffs, being led toward a patrol car. He was crying, his body shaking with sobs. Brenda screamed something I couldn't hear, gesticulating wildly while another officer tried to calm her down. 20 minutes after breaking my arm, my son was being arrested. And I, drugged with painkillers in the back of an ambulance, felt something strange. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't vengeance. It was simply the feeling that finally, after months of manipulation and abuse, someone else was seeing the truth I had tried to deny for so long. At the hospital, while waiting in the emergency room, Olivia arrived running with Leo hot on her heels. She hugged me carefully, avoiding my injured arm, and cried against my shoulder. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have protected you better." "You did protect me," I whispered. "You called the police. You saved me." Leo spoke with the officers and the doctors, taking notes, documenting everything. Nurses took photographs of my arm before the surgery. A social worker came to ask me questions about my domestic situation, about the history of abuse, about my future safety. I had surgery that night. The surgeon had to insert a plate and screws to hold the fractured bone. They told me recovery would take months, that I might never fully regain the range of motion, that at my age, fractures were complicated and dangerous. When I woke up from the anesthesia, with my arm wrapped in a cast and elevated in a sling, Olivia was there. And so was Leo, with a pile of legal documents. "Ellie," he said softly, "Ethan is in custody. They charged him with domestic assault and attempted extortion. Brenda was also arrested as an accomplice. They both face serious charges. I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. Don't omit anything." And so, with tears streaming down my cheeks and pain pulsing in my arm, I told the whole story. Every manipulation, every threat, every moment where I should have said enough, but didn't. Outside my hospital room, in some police station cell, my son finally faced the consequences of his actions. And I, broken but still alive, began the process of healing. Not just my arm, but my shattered heart and my crushed spirit. Justice had finally arrived, and although it hurt more than I imagined, it also felt like the first breath of fresh air in months. 3 months after that horrible night, I sat on the balcony of my apartment with a hot cup of coffee in my right hand. My left arm was still in the sling, although the cast had been removed 2 weeks earlier. Physical therapy was painful and slow, but the doctors said I was progressing well for someone my age. I hated that phrase. For someone my age. As if being 60 automatically turned me into fragile glass. Life had found a new rhythm, a calmer one, more mine. Olivia still came every day, now more for company than for protection. We had coffee, watched soap operas, gossiped about the neighbours in the building. Mr. Johnson brought me the mail personally and always stayed a few minutes to make sure I was all right. The entire building knew my story. At first I was ashamed, but over time I learned that there was no shame in being a victim. The shame belonged to those who hurt me. Ethan accepted a plea deal with the prosecution. 2 years of probation, community service, mandatory anger management therapy, and a restraining order that prohibited him from coming near me for 5 years. He wouldn't go to prison, but he would have a criminal record for the rest of his life. Leo explained to me that since it was his first offence and he showed genuine remorse, the judge was lenient. Brenda wasn't so lucky. The investigation revealed that she had been trying to forge my signature on bank documents weeks before the incident. Detectives found drafts of power of attorney documents with my signature practiced over and over again on sheets hidden in her car. She faced charges of attempted fraud, conspiracy, and complicity in assault. Her trial was scheduled for 2 months from now. The pregnancy Brenda spoke of never existed. It was another lie, another manipulation, another way to emotionally pressure me. When Leo confirmed it, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because there was no innocent baby caught in this mess. Sadness because it confirmed the extent to which they were willing to lie. Ethan tried to contact me several times through his attorney. Apology letters that Leo received and asked me if I wanted to read. I read the first 3. They were full of regret, explanations of how the debts had driven him crazy, how Brenda had manipulated him too, how he never meant to hurt me. After the 3rd letter, I asked Leo to stop delivering them. Not because I didn't care, but because I needed to heal without constantly reopening the wound. The apartment truly became my home. I put photos on the walls. Not of Ethan, at least not yet. That hurt too much. But of Robert, of my parents, of happy moments from a life I built with work and love. I bought new plants for the balcony. Olivia helped me choose cream-coloured curtains that made the living room feel warm and cozy. With the money I had left, almost $115,000, after paying for the apartment and medical expenses, Leo helped me create a trust administered by a trustworthy law firm. A monthly amount was deposited into my account for my expenses. The rest was protected, conservatively invested, secured for my future. No one could touch it. Not even me, without the approval of the trust administrator. I updated my will, too. A smaller portion for Ethan, because despite everything, he was still my son, and I couldn't completely erase that maternal love that had defined my life for decades. But the greater part would go to charitable organizations that helped the elderly victims of family financial abuse. I wanted my money to serve to protect other women like me, so they wouldn't be alone when their own families turned against them. Olivia had introduced me to a support group for victims of family abuse. We met every Tuesday afternoon at the community center, listening to the stories of other women, some with situations even worse than mine, helped me process what I had lived through. I learned that I wasn't alone, that financial abuse of the elderly by their children was more common than anyone wanted to admit. That shame and maternal love kept many women silent while they were stripped of everything. One September afternoon, while returning from physical therapy, I found a young woman crying in the lobby of my building. She had a baby in her arms and an old suitcase at her feet. Mr. Johnson was trying to console her, explaining that the apartment she came to see had already been rented. Something in her desperation touched me. I approached and asked her story. Her name was Jessica Adams. She had escaped from an abusive husband with her 6-month-old daughter. She had no family. She had no money. She had been sleeping in shelters for 2 weeks, looking for a permanent place. I gave her the address of the social services that could help her. I gave her money for food and diapers. And when she thanked me with tears in her eyes, I realized something important. My pain, my experience, my story could serve for something more than just my own healing. They could help others. I started volunteering at the community center. I helped other older women understand their financial rights. I taught them to set boundaries with manipulative family members. I shared my story, not with shame, but with the purpose of warning and educating. Leo came once a month to give free legal consultations. My arm never completely healed. It still ached on cold mornings. I still couldn't lift heavy things. The doctors said arthritis would probably set in over time. It was a permanent reminder of what had happened. But it was also a symbol of my survival, of my strength, of my refusal to be destroyed. One afternoon, while having coffee with Olivia on my balcony, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me respond. "Mum." Ethan's voice froze me. We hadn't spoken in 3 months. "How did you get this number?" "Your lawyer gave it to me. He said I could try calling, but that you would decide whether to answer." His voice sounded different, softer, more broken. I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. Truly. Every day. Every moment. I'm so sorry, Mum." I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued. "I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I'm in therapy, that I'm working on myself, that I finally understand what I did to you, what I almost destroyed." "Almost," I repeated softly. "But you didn't succeed." "No, I didn't." He paused for a long time. "You are stronger than I ever was. You always have been." "I had to learn to be. You taught me that lesson in the most painful way possible." "I know. And I'll live with that for the rest of my life." Another silence. "Do you think someday, maybe in years, we could?" "I don't know, Ethan. Honestly, I don't know. Today the pain is too fresh. The damage is too deep." "I understand. Just take care of yourself, Mum. Please." He hung up before I could respond. I stood there with the phone in my hand, silent tears running down my cheeks. Olivia put her hand on mine. "Are you all right?" "I'm going to be," I replied. And it was true. The sun was beginning to set over the park. Children played on the swings. Couples walked hand in hand. Life continued, indifferent to personal dramas and family tragedies. And I was here, alive, free, broken, but healing. I had learned the hardest lesson of all, that love does not mean self-destruction, that protecting yourself is not selfishness, that setting boundaries does not make you a bad mother, that the family that harms you does not deserve unlimited access to your life, your peace, or your money. I refused to give my son the money from my house sale. His wife completely lost control. She told him to pull me hard, and he broke my arm. But 20 minutes later, they were begging for forgiveness and crying in desperation as police sirens echoed in the night. And I, Eleanor Foster, at 60 years old, survived. More than that, I learned to live again, this time, on my own terms. I took a sip of my coffee, felt the warm evening breeze, and smiled. Small, perhaps, sad around the edges, but genuine. I was free. And that freedom, bought with pain and tears, was worth more than any amount of money.